The Detroit Lions have moved to 10-1 on the season after beating the Indianapolis Colts 24-6 Sunday afternoon. It's just wild to me how well the Lions have played this season on both sides. Normally it's their offense that gets the job done, but in this one, even though they did score 3 touchdowns and kick the field goal, it was their defense. They held Indy to just 6 points. The second half, the Colts offense was non-existent. And the reason for that was really two things. For one, it was the pressure that they got in the defensive interior by Aleem McNeil. Of course, Zadarius Smith had a good game as well, but Aiden Hutchinson was the best player in all of football on the defensive side of the ball this season, and they lose him. And not to say that they've been the same, but they've still been very, very good at getting after the quarterback. Richardson was under pressure, saw he had 15 pressures, about 8 minutes left. That only went up. Completes just 11 of 28 passes for 172 yards. Did add 61 with his legs, but the Lions, they'll take that any single day. No touchdowns by the quarterback for the other team. Good luck beating the Lions because they go out there in the second quarter. Of course, they had 2 touchdowns. The third quarter, they had a touchdown. And then late, they ended up kicking that 56-yard field goal by Bates, who still has not missed this season, which is incredible. I remember he played soccer, never even kicked field goals when he was in school, and now he's turned into one of the best kickers in the league. To me, the MVP of this game would be between Aleem McNeil and Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll just give it to both of them. Gibbs goes 21 of 90, 4.3 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. As a receiver, also gives you 9 yards, had a couple of screens designed for him. The Colts, they were sitting on run late, and Gibbs still was able to break some tackles and pick up additional yardage. I think he's honestly the most dynamic running back in all of football. He's got that type of speed, especially when he just hits a hole. The burst he has, there's just no one else that's able to do that. I mean, Devon Achane is a guy that comes to mind, but there's just not really many running backs in the league that have that just sort of second level of Jahmyr Gibbs. Dave Montgomery ended up getting injured. 8 for 37, did have a touchdown, had 36 yards as a receiver. A little bit unfortunate, but the Lions thankfully didn't really need him to go out there and to get a ton of carries just because they had control of this game. Not necessarily from the start because it was very, very competitive in that first quarter, but the next three were not competitive at all. I mean, the Lions just dominated this football game. But Craig Reynolds had a carry, so did Jamison Williams. Jamo had a really good game, led them in receiving, 5 for 64. I actually started him in fantasy. I've had him on my bench the whole year, and I figured it's the Colts. Why not throw him in there? Even though the Colts play zone and Jamo's done his damage this season against man, I had faith in him. Goff, 26 of 36. 269 yards, took 3 sacks. He was under a lot of pressure in this game. The Colts, they did well. Latu, their rookie, of course, out of UCLA, forced a fumble on Goff, but the Lions, Montgomery actually dove on top of it. D-Buck had a sack early on in this game. The Colts fought defensively. They played the Lions well. I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and say that Detroit offensively struggled. They had 24 points. They did not struggle. But just given that they were averaging about 33 a game coming into this, they had just dropped, what was it, like 52 last week? Was it? Yeah, 52 in the Jags. I expected the Lions to put up like 40 in this game, but they didn't. It was their defense that won them this one. Give credit to Aaron Glenn. I'm not sure if he's going to be on the thumbnail. I think he actually is. It could be Campbell. I'm not really sure what I'll go with, but it really should be Glenn because he's going to be a head coach. So is Ben Johnson. Both these assistants will not be assistants for long, if not next season. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. But in terms of this Lions defense, their secondary, they had a couple of the guys get injured in this one, and their backups came in, and the Colts tested them, and they had a couple of the completions, but overall, the Lions were sticky in coverage, especially in that fourth down where the Colts had their last possession. They just threw it underneath the Pittman. They needed 6 yards, and he got a couple of yards. I mean, that says a lot about your secondary when it's a 4th and 6, and you run a drag route underneath, and you're able to wrap them up immediately. I mean, that is as tight coverage as it gets. And again, we did see, of course, Carlton Davis go down with an injury. Hopefully he's going to be good because the Lions play on a short week. They actually play on Thanksgiving next Thursday against the Bears, a game that they're going to want to get. The thing with the Lions is they do have the tiebreaker against the Vikings, but they're only technically one game ahead of them for the number 1 seed in the NFC and, of course, in the NFC North, which they're both trying to get a bye, but especially winning the division, if you don't get that bye, you end up getting a home field game. But the Lions, I don't really think there's anyone in the NFC even close to being on their level. The Vikings they were hanging in that game and they could have had a chance to win. But I just think the Lions, they're the best offense. The Ravens, to me, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I would have said they were the best, but the Lions have just been more consistent. The Ravens have had multiple games this year where they just lost to bad teams, the Browns, the Raiders, and their offense hasn't showed up. But the Lions, all season, they've come out here and they put up points. I mean, their lowest scoring game was 16 this year, which is just pretty wild to me. That was all the way back on September 15th against the Bucks, and that's their only loss too. They lost that by 4. So Detroit, you look at what they've done: 52 in the Titans. They did score 31 in the Vikings, which is extremely impressive. 47 in the Cowboys. They scored 24 in the Packers in Lambeau. In the Texans game, 26, they won that with their defense, and then the Jags game, 52. So you can see they can win games with their defense, they can win games with their offense, they can win games with both at the same time. Detroit, to me, as of right now, it would be hard for me to pick against them. I definitely thought highly of the Packers coming into the year, but right now, I mean, it's been the Vikings and the Lions that have been, without question, the best teams in the division, even though no one's technically out of it. But Detroit, they've got the Bears, Packers, Bills up next. I mean, normally you look at that schedule and you think that's extremely tough, and it is, but the Lions will take care of business, especially because they got all 3 of those at home, and then they have to go to Chicago, to Santa Clara against the Niners, and then they have a home game, which should be flexed, because it could be up for the division at that point, week 18 against the Vikings. But I'm not going to sit here and lie. This was the first Lions game. I'm looking at this was the first Lions game I've actually watched all year. Just because, I mean, they get a lot of coverage. I used to make Lions videos like every single day back when nobody talked about them. That was the year where they actually brought in Dan Campbell. I know it wasn't Dan Campbell. It was or was it the year they got Dan Campbell? No, it wasn't. It was the next year after that where they were a couple of games under 500. They got hot. They made a late playoff push, and Goff just completely turned it around. I'm happy for Goff. I'm happy for this team in general. Got to give Brad Holmes credit the way he's drafted. I was there when this was just being built. The Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes era, Jared Goff, and to see it where it's at, I knew they had the potential to do this, and now they're doing it. And obviously, like, if you guys didn't know, I'm a Colts fan, so it definitely hurts that we lost this, because now we have I think a 24% chance to make the playoffs. If we had beaten you guys, it would have been a 47. So we're dropping over 20% odds. But at the end of the day, we were never supposed to win this game. The Lions are a Super Bowl contender. The Colts are a team sort of fighting for their lives. But Richardson, I thought he played well. I'll have a Colts video out later going over my thoughts on that. But I thought Richardson honestly handled the zone. It's just the pressure got to him. And I don't mean pressure in the sense of it was a big game, more so the actual physical pressure of Aleem McNeil and Zadarius Smith and this Lions front. They just absolutely got the better of this Colts offensive line. Jonathan Taylor was non-existent in this game. I saw a Colts fan put $1,000 bet on, I think it was JT going over 65 yards. They definitely lost that. He had 35 on 11 carries, just 3.2, and 14 of those 35 was on one carry. It was like a 3rd and 25. So, yeah, the Lions, they shut down Richardson. They shut down JT. They, of course, shut down really everyone outside of Michael Pittman, who goes 6 for 96. Pierce had 1 catch for 39 yards. 39 yards is a lot of yards, but it's 1 catch. Josh Downs just 3 for 27. I mean, he came into this as our best receiver without question. Tight ends, not a single catch. Of course, Drew Ogletree did drop a tight end, which would have been an easy touchdown. It was a 2nd down and then 3rd down. Richardson had to throw it away. Yeah, the Lions defense, honestly, I did expect the Colts to put up more than 6 points. I knew the Lions defense was very, very good down in the red zone. I knew there wasn't many quarterbacks. I don't think there was a single quarterback this year that actually has lit them up. Baker, I mean, how many points did the Bucs score? Like 20? Yeah, so Baker, that's not even lighting them up. And Goff threw for over 300. And yeah, so there wasn't a single quarterback this year that lit up the Lions. So I didn't think Richardson would light them up, but I expected some rushing touchdowns on the ground. But penalties cost the Colts, and that's why the Lions were very comfortable defensively, because the Colts were in a lot of 3rd and longs because they couldn't run the ball and there was penalties. So give credit to the Lions. They're just a way more disciplined team. They're probably going to the Super Bowl this year. They should have last year. They should have beat the Niners.